Great. Okay. Well, we'll get started. I feel a bit like a broken record when I get terribly enthusiastic about our wonderful growers when they join us for these sessions. But I can honestly say that there isn't a more popular winery that we work with at Honest Grapes than La Giaretta. And even before Honest Grapes in my wine chap days, and even before that, the wines have always been hugely well regarded and well received by everyone who's ever tasted them. And this is probably the first time we've done a tasting of not quite, but almost the full range, and certainly the full range in terms of style, from the introductory Valpolicella right the way up to the single vineyard Reserva Amarone and beyond to the amazing Recioto. So it's a real treat, and it's a real treat to have Francesca with us. I'm just going to pop back so I can see you, Francesca. There we go. Yep, give us a wave, Francesca, who's also joined by Erica as well, her number two at the estate. It's great to have you with us. We've had a superbly, successful and fun relationship over the years. We love introducing your wines to people. As I said, I know we have some existing fans, and by the look of it, some people who have never tried them before. So perhaps we could start by introducing yourself and the estate. And whilst you're doing that, if everyone wants to start enjoying the first wine, the Valpolicella Volpare, then Francesca can tell us about that as well. Over to you, Francesca.
Grazie. Ciao a tutti. Hello, everybody. I'm Francesca from Italy, La Giaretta, azienda agricola, and we are a small family farm, and we are in Valpolicella Classic area. In Valpolicella there are 5 valleys. We are in the middle, Amarone della Valpolicella. You produce wine from always, but from 1990 we started with the bottles. And we produce wine only with the typical grapes from Valpolicella, the red wine. Our philosophy of job is the quality, not the quantity. So we start with the Valpolicella Volpare. It is our entry level. Here, the bottle. Valpolicella Volpare, inside there are Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, and only here you can find Molinara. It is a fresh wine. We are in sale in 2018, 13.5% of alcohol. Fresh wine with red color, and the parfum cherry. We use this wine every day in Italy because it is easy to drink, especially for lunchtime with pasta, pizza, vegetable, fresh cheese.
And Francesca, you mentioned the grapes that form the building blocks for the Valpolicella. Could you tell us a bit more about the different grapes? So Corvina and Corvinone, obviously Rondinella, and you mentioned just a little bit of Molinara as well in that. Yeah. So tell us a bit more about the grapes.
Corvina is our king. It is the best grapes. But we have Corvina. It is an oval grapes. Then there is Corvinone. One in Italian means big. So it is a biggest grape, a little bit. And they give power and substance to the wine. Then there is Rondinella. Rondinella has high acidity, so for the life of wine it is very important, the Rondinella. And Molinara, it is a special grapes with a light color and taste gusto acido, fresco, fresh. Yes, so we use only Molinara for this fresh wine, okay, with a light color. This is for grapes. We have the harvest in September, and we press the grapes immediately. Nur tank, only tank, stop.
And I think it's certainly interesting what you were saying about Valpolicella being a lovely kind of lunchtime red, you know, a light red to have with pasta. It's quite fascinating that this one region of Valpolicella can produce wines that are light and elegant, like the wine we're drinking now, right the way through to the very richest, most powerful and sweetest wines in the world. I think it's unique for a region to have that full spread. Could you also, though, tell us a little bit more about the region itself, about the soils, the climate, you know, unpack, land us in Valpolicella. Tell us about the region.
Okay. The weather, the climate in Valpolicella, we are lucky because Valpolicella is a very small small village. And here we are about 200 meters from the level of the sea. And only here you can find Valpolicella and Amarone, because here there is a special terroir. In France we speak terroir, because the soil is ciottoloso, with stones, with small stones. And so the water go down and our roots go very, very profondo, down.
Very deep. Yeah.
Yes. And only here you can find Valpolicella, because as you know, Merlot, Syrah, Cabernet, you can find in many parts of the world. Only here you can find Valpolicella because the climate and the soil, ciottoloso, small stones, and the temperature, of course, because here the winter are not so cold, and especially in summer we have hot in the day but cold in the night. So the different temperature between night and day can help the grapes for right develop. Right. Sorry for my English.
No, please, Francesca. That's excellent, and I think a lot of people's introduction to the region is through wines in this style, the Valpolicella Classico style. And then if we move on now to our next wine, to the Ripasso, I imagine there are certainly people here this evening who don't necessarily understand what Ripasso means or how you make it. So, you know, how is this different from the basic Valpolicella?
Okay, allora, Ripasso, for my personal taste, is a very good wine. Why? Because it is a jolly. It is not so light, but not so strong. The concentration is here. It is more than the Valpolicella. The color, the alcohol, the parfum sono più complessi. More complex. Of course, here with the traditional techniques of Ripasso, so we bring the fresh wine Valpolicella and we put the fresh wine on the dry skin of Amarone. Here the Valpolicella bring color, tannins, parfum from the dry skin of Amarone, and so the wine change in up, in Superiore, and this Ripasso bring more concentration, and it is a little bit softly than the Valpolicella, as a hug. Okay, these wines stay about 1 year in barrels, French oaks, high selection wood. So there are some parfum, parfum as vanilla, spices, but not strong, because we put a lot of attention to the barrels. So it is only
like a scent. So you can kind of smell it and taste it, but it's not so strong that it kind of covers the wine itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of people think of a Ripasso as being the midpoint in terms of style between Valpolicella and Amarone, and you have Ripasso in the middle. In terms of the winemaking that you have at La Giaretta, how do you divide responsibility between you and Francesco? Who does what in the? I mean, I know
you're the boss.
You're the boss. I know you're the boss.
He's my husband, and he is the boss. Allora, it is funny because okay.
That's not what he says. That's definitely not what he said.
Now, it is funny because at the university I study enology, okay, but recently I'm often in office, and before the COVID, around for the fair or tasting and so on. Francesco studied economy, but the La Giaretta farm is la proprietà. My father-in-law was the owner, okay? And so Francesco learned all from the father, from the family. So the winemaker is Francesco, okay? But we are a small family farm, so we work all together, okay? So as you know, the man month and the woman month are completely different. So it is very important to cross the 2 months to do right wines. So we think
it works out as a very good combination, but we had a couple of comments in the chat here about the Ripasso, asking, is the Ripasso a second fermentation on the skins? Or it is, okay.
Yes, it is. We bring the Valpolicella. In September, we bring. At first, in September, it is harvest time, okay? Our harvest, it is only by hand. We have no machines. We go out and we have a high selection of the grapes. We bring the first grapes that we bring are the best for to put to dry, for to do the Amarone and the Recioto. As you know, for to do the Amarone and Recioto, we dry these grapes from September to January for the Amarone, and from September to March for the Recioto. Okay. Then we go again in the fields and we bring the rest of the grapes for to do the Valpolicella. We press the Valpolicella in October immediately, okay? In January, when it will be time for to press the Amarone, after the pressing, we bring the fresh Valpolicella and we put the fresh wine Valpolicella on the dry skin of Amarone. Here we have a second fermentation. With this second fermentation called Ripasso, because in Italian Ripasso means come back, we have this important wine, because with the second fermentation, the Valpolicella change in alcohol from 13.5 changing 14.5% of alcohol, the color, light color in dark color, tannins, polyphenol, and more power, superiore upper. Yes.
Another question that I have, which I think others will as well. what is the size of your production? You mentioned you've 11 hectares, but how many bottles do you make? Are you a small grower? Are you medium size? You're not big, but where do you fit in the region?
Okay, in our region we are a small medium, because it is not so simple. We produce about 100,000 bottles in a year in total. We are small, but now there are also very small farm with 3 hectares. Okay, but there are important farm with 100 hectares. Of course, we are small, medium.
It's interesting to me that you have vineyards within the Classico region of Valpolicella, which are spread across the different subzones. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about what the different vineyard areas, how do they differ in the Classico region?
Okay, as you know, on the hill is the best. In flat, yes, you can produce wine and the wine is good, but the quality is always on the hill. In Valpolicella Classic area, there are 5 valleys, okay? We are in the middle, and our valley is Marano, and the typical taste from Marano di Valpolicella is the cherry. Okay, in Negrar, of course, but Marano, the timbre is the cherry. È molto spinto, la spiega.
So it's a very strong taste here.
Okay, in classic, allora, in classic area, we work all goods, and it is very hard to. Allora, the very different is not too classic, but classic and not classic. Okay, as you know, on market there are Valpolicella Classica and Valpolicella not classic. The difference is here. In classic area, yes, of course, there is one Fumane, for example, the other Comune, there are a lot of strawberry, but there are very sfumature, very small parfum, small difference between the Valley from Valpolicella Classic. The big difference here and Valpolicella non-classic, and it is about 1 hour by car from here, 60-70 kilometers far from here. And the wine are always good, but the taste and the parfum are completely different. Yeah. And you can, when you drink them, you can understand it. Yes. But here, Valpolicella Classic, Fumane is with more strawberry, Marano, cherry, Negrar, yes, cherry, but there is a lot of olive tree, so the cherry is not so important as in Marano, okay? But the quality in these 5 valleys are always high, and the difference are not so important or so high.
Absolutely, and I think it's something I always learned from the very early days, where you see Classico after an Italian region, you know that's the hills, and we love hills. We love hills because, as you say, the quality is better. The diurnal temperature difference, you were saying the day-night is better, the temperature is better, the drainage is better, the elevation, the exposure, it makes better wines. Yeah.
And it is very hard to work fields on the hill because we have a lot of wall, we call it marogne. Marogne are old wall, come si può dire, fatto di sassi, cioè la marogna.
So basically in the fields we have this, they're usually not so high walls, and these are made of these cobblestones or like little stones. So it's hard work when you have those in the middle.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We call it marogne in local dialect.
So moving on to our third wine, I think this is the most fascinating wine of the lineup this evening, the Cor di Vin, because it's quite possibly the one wine that no one here will have tried before. And I think it's a very unusual technique, how it is made. So please tell us more about this wine, how it's made, why.
Right.
Yeah.
I start with the label. Allora, the name is Cor di Vin 95. Allora, it is a fun, sorry. Why? Because Cor di Vin, cor in Italian or local dialect means cuore, heart of wine. But if you read the big letters, you read Cor Vin, our king grape. So inside there are 95% of Cor Vin plus 5% of Marcelin. About 15, 18 years ago, Francesco and me went to the Recioto. Recioto is the biggest and important farm company in Friuli Venezia Giulia, in the northeast of Italy, where you can find all the small trees. The selection is very, very high. And there we discovered the Marcelin. It was for us a surprise. And when we tasted, immediately we thought a wedding with our Corvina. So the quality inside this wine is similar as an Amarone. Why? Because here we dry the grapes, but not in the room, in the fruitoir, but in the field. We go in the field at the start of the harvest in September. We go in the field and we cut the arms. So the grapes don't drink, don't eat, but stay under the sun for about 1 month and a half. At the end of the harvest, we go there to bring the grapes to do this wine. Okay, the dry is not as an Amarone, but thanks to this dry the field, the concentration in the glass is important. Okay, this wine stay 1 year in French oak, special selection, where the oak, the spessore, the width of the Brevard is not so gross, not so big. It is slim. So the transpiration between the wine inside and the oxygen outside is faster than normal. And this is our matrimonio, our wedding, okay? And it is funny because in matrimonio, in our right wedding, we think 50-50. So at start, we thought 50 Corvina and 50 Marcelin, 50 for his, 50 for her. But only 5% of Marcelin was enough to give color, parfum, and a special taste for this wine.
It's a fascinating and, as far as I'm aware, a very unusual way of making wine. This kind of breaking or snapping of the arms and aging the grapes still on the vine. Is it quite common in Valpolicella? Do you see it anywhere else? Do other people do this?
No, però lo so, I know, but I think in the other part of Italy, they dry the grapes in the field, I think. But it is an idea to have always our personal product. You can find our product only from La Giaretta. Okay, you can find this wine in other winery. It is our particular production. The quality is high, and you can find Cor di Vin only here. And it is our special products for our special clients.
Yeah, it's certainly. Remind me, when did you introduce it first? What was the first vintage of the?
Allora, the first vintage was now we're in 2015, 2013.
Yeah, and
at the start we produced a very small quantity because we didn't know if the wine was good or not. The first experiment was 2012. It's good, 2012, yes, but very small. 2013 was a successful, and so we go on, and now we are inside 2015. Yes, because at start it is not. We are not sure that the wine was capito, understood.
Sure.
But we are happy now because our project, our idea went big, and so we are happy.
And how many bottles of not just this wine but the previous two wines do you make, so we get a sense of your level of production? How many bottles do you make? 20 bottiglie.
Okay, by 2012, I think we try 100 bottles because we
were scared about the fact that they could be left here, so we would have to drink all of them.
Okay, it was an experiment. 2013, we started with 10,000, okay, and 2015 we are
20,000. Okay, sure.
Yes.
And how many bottles of the Ripasso do you make, and how many bottles of the Volpare?
Okay, allora Volpare about 15.000. Sorry, 50,000. Okay, Ripasso 30,000.
Sure. So it's I think you said that your overall production now is about 100,000 bottles. So that's not a huge production at all. When you consider your neighbors, Mazzi just next door, and then quite nearby Allegrini, who are making many times that amount. It's very boutique production indeed.
Two different market. Usually who drink Mazzi don't drink La Giaretta, because Mazzi it is for a biggest, usually in Italy of course, Mazzi it is on the supermarket, it is for the big distribution. Okay.
So as we're moving up the scale, we're now moving to our Amarone, the Amarone Classico 16. Yeah, now this one thing I find fascinating about Amarone is the different styles that you can have. And what I've always found particularly fascinating about your wines is the transparency and the relation between the Valpolicella all the way through to the Reserva. Too many Amarones, they substitute flesh for freshness. So you lose the acidity, you lose the energy, and they just become very big and unexciting. So I think what's really impressive about your Amarone is that it's a big wine, but it's light on its feet. It's still fresh, it's still intense, it's got energy. Yeah.
It is also, okay, Amarone is a big wine, 16% of alcohol, but our Amarone, especially the black label, it is easy to drink. It is elegant, balanced. because it has a lot of power, but it is not heavy. Okay, so it is for the people. It is easy to understand. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And in terms of the production, how you make the Amarone, I think there's sometimes a misconception that that sweetness comes from being late harvest, but that's not the case. You actually pick early, don't you, to preserve the acidity, to preserve the freshness. Is that right?
No, bravissimo, sì, bravo, sì, perfetto. And to do the Amarone, it is not so easy. It is very hard to produce Amarone, and there are a lot of work behind this wine. But as you know, we have the harvest by hand. We must bring only the best grapes. We put a lot of attention during the harvest, because if we put in the fructuar bad grapes, maybe comes the mosquitoes and the production goes off. So it is very dangerous. So we need people who know the grapes for the harvest, who know which grapes are the best, which grapes can cut. Usually are the old people, because they have a lot of experience. So we have my daddy, my uncle, old people, and they know the best grapes to put to dry. And with the dry, usually we lost the 60% of our production. So we need a big quantity of grapes to produce a short quantity of wine. But the concentration of this wine is super, big.
And just in case anyone missed that, and for my benefit as well, are you suggesting that you the concentration is down to 60%? So you effectively lose 40% of the, yeah, okay, fine.
Yes, because the water goes up, okay, and the grape is very, very slim, and always in January, in Deutsch. When I go in the fructuar, always we think, oh my God, we make wine from this slim grape. It's crazy, but it is very nice to see it. I think if you can one time in life, you must come here and see during the harvest and during the time for the pressing, the fructuar. It is very, very nice, beautiful. Yes.
Amarone has always been, for me, the one wine in the world you can always spot. You can always see in a blind tasting. You will always be able to pick out the Amarone. It's so distinctive. But can you tell us, how does the wine age? How does it change as it matures? What happens to it?
Allora, Amarone, the life of Amarone is very, very long, because during the aging process, the develop is very, very slowly, but interessante, affascinante. Fascinating. You can drink Amarone 5, 6 years old, or 10, 12, or 20 years old. Depends from your taste, of course. But it is funny and nice to drink different age and compare the development of the wine. And yes, the life is so long, and if you are lucky, 25, 30 years, or if the cork is good, and if your cellar is good.
I've always bought Amarone instead of port as presents for godchildren or anyone else.
People ask us the year for the birth, or when come a new boy boy, a new girl, a child. Yes.
Because it does last a very long time. I think one of the disappointing things in the UK is we don't see a lot of really mature Amarone. It's quite rare to see bottles from the 90s or the 80s. But as an aside to everyone here this evening, I know the restaurant has changed hands now, but there was a restaurant, it's still there, in Verona, Ineteco Can Grande, yeah, which had an amazing cellar, perhaps it still does, of mature Amarone, where you could try wines, you know, back to the 60s and 70s, and it's completely different from the wine that you're trying this evening, and it's really fascinating to see how the wine evolves over 10, 20 years. It becomes an entirely different wine, but it's absolutely fascinating. So when everyone can travel, do head to Verona and try some old Amarone for sure. It's definitely recommended.
It is very nice to understand, and for our winemaker to understand the development about the wine. If the wine change in better way or not. It is very important to open, to taste, and to compare the different vintages. It's very nice.
So talking of very nice, let's move on to the I would say the flagship of La Giaretta, the I Quadretti Reserva. Tell us all about this incredible wine.
I don't know if to say it is the queen or the king. The queen, right? The queen, I Quadretti Amarone is our reserve. We produce only in the best vintages, not every year, and in small quantity. When the weather, the season is good, we produce about 2,000–3,000 bottles only. Quadretti is the name of our best field. Why is the best? Because in Quadretti there are the oldest trees, about 80–90 years old, and the exposition is the best. The oldest trees give us the top of the quality. Okay? Quadretti stay in barrels, French oaks, high selection wood, for 3 years. It is a long time. And then 1 year in bottle, sorry, to sleep before the sale. Okay. Quadretti is an important wine for people who want a special Amarone. Here the concentration is high and the parfum are profumi terziari, as liquirizia, like for its pepper, the strawberry, of course, for the chocolates. The complexity is very, very high in the mouth and in the nose.
Yeah, it's for me, it's the point at which wine becomes a fortified wine almost. It's got some of that port character, that incredible molto concentrato. I mean, it's so rich. It's so chocolatey. The fruit is already almost pruneau. I mean, it's very evolved. What do you personally, what do you like to eat with the Quadretti? What's a good pairing?
Allora, when I drink Quadretti, I organize the events. So before I open the bottle, 1 hour, if you can, 1 hour before, and put in the decanter the wine, so you can help the wine to open the bouquet. I love this wine with aged cheese, as Parmigiano Reggiano, 36 months, or blue cheese as you want, as Roquefort, or for us, carne, meat, meat, oppure here in Valpolicella there is a typical food as wild pork or cacciagione.
A wild thing.
Yeah.
Yes, fasan or potrebbe essere brasati or
So braised beef.
braised
Here is people like Valpolicella which sauce is made from the Valpolicella itself. So you get saucy and
it's certainly a wine where I think anyone here this evening, if you're serving quite a rich dish, you know, with a lot of spices, a lot of herbs, and sometimes you're a bit concerned that maybe it will overpower your red wine. It will not overpower this wine. Nothing will overpower this wine, I think. You know, it's quite a
right. The wine can clean the mouth when you are eating, and it is very hard that the food go up the wine. I agree. Yes. Or if you want a meditation wine at the end of the lunch or the dinner alone, you can drink a glass of Amarone and you can think.
I certainly have to have a very quiet afternoon after a glass of this after lunch. Otherwise, yeah. I'm lucky enough to have a few more mature bottles from 2000, 2001, 2003. And yeah, they're a real centerpiece for a dinner party. I have to say, you know, they come out and it is the wine that everyone talks about for sure. You know, anything else just seems like rosé by comparison. So you know, it's a big wine.
Thank you.
So shall we move on to the Recioto next? And whilst you're pouring that, Francesca, I just thought for the benefit of those who are less well aware about the region, it's quite fascinating if you do your digging about the wines of Italy, because the sweet wines of the Veneto, really specifically the Recioto wines, were mentioned as far back as the 6th century by the Roman writer Cassiodorus, who even at that time said that, you know, these wines are incredibly distinctive, they are unique, they are much loved by the court of the Ostrogoths, if you remember them, you know, and so as far back as the 6th century, the style of wine that you're about to try was famous. And it's amazing that, you know, today it's still considered amongst the, you know, the world's truly great, iconic, which is a word I often overuse, of sweet wines. Quite remarkable. So Francesca, tell us about your Recioto.
Okay. Allora, I try to speak Recioto. I start with the name. Recioto means years in local dialect. Why? Because when we have the harvest, we cut the grapes. It is a pyramid. Okay, we cut only ears because they are the best part, and we put the ears to dry to do the Recioto. Okay, so the name Recioto. It is a red sweet wine. We dry from September to March, and the wine is sweet, but it is a natural sweet. Why? Because we stop the fermentation at half, so the sugar don't change in alcohol, and the wine is a natural sweet. In the past, the popular wine was Recioto for the rich people in the past, or for the persone malate, the sick people. The history said a winemaker forgot the Recioto, and the fermentation don't stop at half, but go down totally, and so the wine was dry. So from this mistake born the Amarone, okay? Because Amarone is the same grapes, the dry But in Amarone, the fermentation is totally down. Here it is up. I don't know if I was clear.
No, that absolutely, Francesca. That makes perfect sense. Just for anyone, the sound is slightly muffled, but yeah, the extraordinary idea that Amarone is spoiled Recioto. It's Recioto that hasn't quite, you know, done what it's meant to have done, and it's amazing that, you know, like so many of the great wines we end up with in the world, like just think of champagne, for example. It's an accident. You know, it's an accident, and it's amazing that we end up this way. Now, the level of concentration with the Recioto compared to the Amarone, how concentrated is?
It's more concentrated as the Amarone, because here the dry is longer than Amarone, much. Yes, the concentration is very, very high. Here we have 100 grams per liter of sugar, so the concentration is very high. Yes, and usually we drink this wine at the end of the lunch or at the end of the dinner with chocolate, dark chocolate, 60–70% of cacao, or dry cake, not cream. Yes. And recently there is it is a fashion to drink a Recioto in Milan as aperitif. I don't know why, but before the lunch or before the dinner. For me, it is hard because my mentality is after all. But now it is cool to drink a Recioto before all.
Okay, interesting. Well, I suppose, you know, there are some fashions for a glass of sweeter wine as an aperitif. Personally, I've always found it lovely with gorgonzola picante as well.
Perfect, yes. See, honey, nuts, yes.
Yeah. In fact, we're a little way off from Christmas, of course, but if you want alternative Christmas drinking, then instead of port and Stilton, gorgonzola picante and this Recioto is a really fabulous pairing to try.
I agree.
Yeah. It's a gorgeous wine, and it is exactly as you said, Francesca. It's one of the very, very, very few wines which really does work with chocolate. So many people try and pair wine with chocolates. You know, the number of Valentine's Day promotions with champagne and chocolate, which are just a disaster, frankly, don't really work. And yet this Recioto, whenever I drink your Recioto, I want to eat chocolate. And whenever I eat chocolate, I want a glass of your Recioto. So I think the two just work brilliantly together. Cheers.
Cheers.
So, interesting here. We've got a comment about forgotten indigenous grapes. Now, you mentioned using Marcellan for the Cor di Vin, but have you looked at Ocellata, for example?
Roseletta, ok. Allora, devi tradurmi. Tommy mi fa parlare troppo.
She said you're letting her speak too much.
Why? Because abbiamo un programma, avremo un vino con l'oseletta. Abbiamo...
Okay, she's actually speaking too much because it's in our program to have a new wine, so a new entry in our family-run business, and it's made with this particular grape,
Oseletta.
Because
we have Oseletta in our kits, but usually we put all together with the other grapes. So we think, why we don't bring the Oseletta alone? We do a special wine, but it's a new project. I can't speak because Francesco killed me. If you know, I spoke this new project.
Brilliant.
So, of course, Oseletta.
Great. Well, there we are. Look, we got an exclusive that we weren't expecting. That's good. Well, I promised Francesca, I won't tell Francesca, but you have to send us a lot of bottles in
Okay, okay.
That seems fair.
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Francesca and Erika, for leading us through these fascinating wines this evening. I'm sure there'll be some more comments and questions. I would just say, whilst people are preparing themselves to ask and say things, I'll just briefly tell the story of how we met many years ago. I was out at Vinitaly looking for wines, and this was, gosh, 15 years ago probably, and it was the last day of Vinitaly. And if anyone's ever been to Vinitaly, then you'll know by the last day you're pretty tired. It's a massive wine fair if you haven't been. And I had about an hour and a half before I had to head off to the airport to catch my plane. And we were spending quite a lot of time with a very nice Swiss importer based in Switzerland. And we asked them if there was one winery in the whole of Vinitaly, the whole of the wine fair, which we must try, then who would it be? And these two guys with a very nice importing business in Switzerland said, as one, La Giaretta. It was instantaneous. And I remember going along and meeting Francesca and Francesco, and it really was love at first sight with the wines. I mean, it was just from the Valpolicella, from the Volpare, which today is still my house drinking red in the summer, right the way up to the meditative Quadretti and the Recioto. It's become a firm favorite at Honest Grapes. Everyone in the team loves the wines. Everyone who buys the wines loves them. And yeah, it's just a great pleasure to have you with us this evening, and to introduce these wines to those who are new to them, and to be able to share them with people who already know them. I think Nathan wanted to mention something as well about the wines too. So please, over to you, Nathan.
I mean, firstly, Francesca, what a wonderful lineup, and such a pleasure to have you here with us. I remember meeting you, when we first started Honest Grapes, 6-7 years ago nearly now, and you doing the tasting that we did at the shoe shop in Henrietta Street in Covent Garden. So, the La Giaretta wines have been a constant feature of our sommelier selection ever since Tom and I started working together. But I just thought I'd tell you a story that was told to me only about 3 or 4 weeks ago by a master of wine, Peter Richards, who's a well-known television wine journalist, I guess, with his wife, Susie. And they awarded Honest Grapes Outstanding Wine Merchant of the Year from Decanter magazine last November. And we went to, the story he reminded me of is that Peter knows Tom, and through Tom knows me, and he comes along to some of the wine fairs where we've exhibited, obviously before the pandemic set in. And he came round to me and said, on two different events, he came round to me and said, the thing I like about Honest Grapes is you don't have every single wine on your stand at the exhibition is Spitzer. It's absolutely brilliant. And he said, you know what? That Amarone, whoever made it, deserves to win a medal. So Francesca, you win the medal by us winning the medal, okay? And Peter actually just reminded me of that story 2 or 3 weeks ago. So thank you for your lineup of wines. They're absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely. Bravo.
Grazie. Thank you very much, Tom, Nathan. Thank you to all. And volevo dire che it is a pleasure for me to work with you, and ed è una grande soddisfazione. It is a great satisfaction, perché loro apprezzano il vino, non è solo vendere, ma è proprio metterci il cuore, e loro mettono il cuore nel proporre i nostri vini, e si vede, insomma, è proprio un amore con affetto.
Yeah, it's basically, so it's a great satisfaction because with you, it's not only about selling wine, but we can feel that you put your heart in it. So we can feel the love in you with your job, and so it's the best for us.
It's a pleasure and an honor. Yes. Thank you very much.
No, Francesca, thank you, and you, Erica, too. It's always a pleasure to taste the wines. As I said, it's great to introduce them to people. We have some lovely offers coming up on the back of this tasting as well. I think Charlie or Angus will send that round to all of you who've been kind enough to join us this evening. Yeah, there will be 10% off cases of any of the wines, and we've even put together, I believe, a special mixed case, so you don't have to just drink them out of 50 mils. There'll be a special mixed case of one of each of the wines as well, which we're putting together with a special discount. Anyway, thank you once again, Francesca and Erica. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for joining us. It's been great to see you all. Great to see a number of you regulars again. Lovely to have some new blood to these tastings. We've got an interesting lineup of events coming up. Bit of a Bordeaux focus next month. And in the meantime, do enjoy your wines from Honest Grapes. Enjoy what's left of these little vials. And we can't wait to see you again for another wine therapy session soon. So thanks very much indeed. Great to see you. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Grazie.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much.
Grazie mille.
Grazie a voi.
Grazie.
I was going to say, you need a lot of these wines because if you're drinking them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you really need to fill up on them, don't you?
The thing I've always found fascinating is how even the Amarone, you can chill. I did it by mistake once. I had a bottle in the fridge, and it was fine. It was delicious. It's rare that you can find such a, you couldn't imagine putting a 15% Barolo or Barossa Shiraz from the fridge, but in fact, Amarone, because the tannins are so well integrated and the sweetness of the fruit, you can actually enjoy them chilled, which that for me was a revelation. Was chilled Amarone was, yeah. I don't know if it's common in Italy. I doubt it, but it can be done if you're thirsty and fancy a 16% refresher. Nice comment there from Graham. The best estate visit of the 2019 trip you arranged for us, Tom. They are such wonderful hosts, and you are, Francesca and Erica, and Francesco too. So yeah, Graham, what was your favorite wine this evening?
Yeah.
I must admit, the Cor di Vin, right, which at the time shows you how my palate's developed over the couple of years we've been doing this, Tom. But I must admit, I bought some later vintages of Quadretti, and clearly that's amazing. But the Ripasso, as is our house wine, we love that. So
if you really love me,
yeah.
I don't know if you remember us. I was rather drunk when I came to yours. And I kept saying to Graham, if you loved me, you'd buy a case of this. And as we kept going through, it was if you'd marry me again, you'd buy a case of this. So we always enjoy your wine. It's great.
Brilliant. Well, we're looking post pandemic to organize some Honest Grapes visits for club members out to key estates that we work with, and I think a visit out to Verona and the Veneto and Trentino Alto Adige would be a very, very popular trip. So I'm sure we will be coming out to see you again, hopefully in not too distant future. Would be lovely.
You are always welcome. Always.
So if you see a coach load of people with masks and wine thieves, that's us.
Brilliant.
Okay. Okay.
Well, team, I'm going to let Francesca and Erica head off and have some dinner. Again, a final thanks to you both, and do pass on our fond wishes to Francesco as well. And you know, we look forward to more events, virtual or ideally live tastings in person very, very soon. So thank you once again, everyone. Have a great evening. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Grazie.
Grazie a voi.
Thank you very much. Grazie mille. It was a pleasure.